story. That's how we connect. I mean, that's how we've connected for thousands of years. So it's definitely.
Okay. All right. So let's take this up. I'm just going to start this recording. I actually started the recording when you said stories are how we connect, because I thought that was a good line. Anyway, so I'm going to pick it up with the introduction and we'll take it from there. Okay.
Sure.
All right. Chris Duane here. Welcome to I Wish I Knew, a show where insightful educators talk about a situation where they found themselves saying, boy, I wish I knew that. Today, we're talking with John Harper. As you know, this is a show where reflective educators share a time when they jumped into something and wished there was one thing they could have known that would have helped out. John, what story do you want to share with us today?
Well, Chris, I've got a lot of times where that has happened, but one, I guess, that comes to mind is that, it's sometimes you don't always have to be right. And I guess this may have happened several times this year. It's happened a lot over the years, but several times this has happened in which parents came in to the school. I'm an assistant principal at elementary school. So parents came in and they were upset about something. And I listened to what they had to say and analyzed it right away and either dismissed it or felt the need to give my opinion. Instead of listening and hearing their concerns and waiting and digesting and thinking, okay, what's best for the child? Because it doesn't matter a lot of times that I'm right. In other words, I had a parent come in and they were angry at me. And I mean, to this day, I believe that what I said was right. And I kind of went off a little bit on this parent. And I don't do that often, but several times a year I do. I lose it a little bit. And I said some things that were harsh, and I think they were true, but the parent was quite angry. And, afterwards, I walked out of that meeting and I thought, you know what, John, you're the man. You told them how it is. You told them what's what. But, as I digested that and I reflected, I thought, John, what you did absolutely nothing to help that child. Because now you got an angry parent. They're not your advocate anymore. They see you as an adversary. And so the parent came back in another time. I apologized to them, and I try to listen more. And it's not about me being right. It's about what do we need to do that's best for this child. Maybe this parent is wrong. And maybe sometimes I just have to sit there and listen. And even if I disagree, bite my tongue, as long as, no one's being hurt or anything like that. But it's...
And that can be hard, it can be hard to sit there and listen and hold your tongue. I can understand that. How did it work out?
I think it worked out well. I think in the end, I think the parent knows that. I think the parent's probably still mad at me, but the parent at least knows that I'm someone who can admit a mistake and apologize. The kid still talks to me, and the kid and I get along well. And the parent, understandably, was upset. And I think sometimes, this kind of goes back to the theme of this show. I wish I knew. I wish I knew, before I had children. I have a 7-year-old and a 12-year-old. And before I had children, I was baffled by how angry parents could be when they came in upset about something that happened to their child. I thought it wasn't that big a deal. How are you so upset about this? And then you have your own kids. And then your own child comes home and they say, well, the teacher said this, or the kid said this to me, or a kid hit me.
It's interesting how I'm sorry to interrupt, but it's interesting how when we become parents, our paradigm shifts so dramatically. And those things that were so unclear to us and so befuddling, all of a sudden just become so crystal clear to us. It's an interesting shift.
It is, because then you have, then you can relate. Oftentimes as an assistant principal, I deal with discipline and I deal with fights. They don't happen that often, but I deal with fights, and a parent will come in and they're angry and they'll say, you know what, well, I told my kid if somebody hits them, you got to hit them back. And, on the surface, or if, when we first hear that, we think that doesn't make sense. And then something like that happens to your child. Your child comes home and says they got pushed or they got hit, and you think, what the heck on it? Did you hit him back? Did you do this? Did you do that? It's not always the right thing, but if you're real with a parent, I think that's important. If you're real with them, then that makes a big difference. And so, I wish I knew what I know now. And it's tough because because you have to go through those growing pains. And then when you go through those growing pains, they mean a lot more. So I think that this podcast is very important because there are going to be times where you go through things and it's going to hurt and you're going to get called out, or you're going to feel stupid, or you're going to feel like an idiot, or you're going to have to apologize and eat some crow. But in the end, you grow and you become better. I think that's important. I mean, wouldn't you agree?
Are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Oh, yes, I can hear you. Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you agree? Have you had times like that?
Yes, absolutely. I think that many times when I thought about putting this show together, I mean, many times through my life, I have walked out thinking, I wish I'd thought of that. I wish I knew that before I did that. And it's hard. But I guess my question to you about that is, so how has it changed how you handle new situations? I mean, I know that I try to be mindful of what it looks like to sit on the other side of the desk, on the other side of that situation. So how does it affect you? How has it changed what you do now, or how you handle things?
I think it's made me realize that I don't always have to have an answer, and I don't always have to respond, and I don't always have to talk. Because a lot of times I'll be on the other end of I'll be, holding the phone, and there might be an angry parent, and they're talking and they're voicing their concerns. And sometimes you just have to let people get it out. Because I'm sure there's times in my life where people have just had to let me get out what I had to say because I was angry, or because I felt like something was wrong. And it's really hard, but I think what I'm trying to do differently, it's actually a goal of mine this year, because last year, probably 4 or 5 times, I upset parents and handled situations improperly. I felt like I really needed to insert my opinion, and I was too opinionated. And basically, bottom line, what I did wasn't best for the child. And I think that was bad. So this year, a goal of mine, I was just talking about this the other day, is to listen and not always feel like I have to have the answer, and think, what is best for this child? What is best for the child? Is it best if I fracture this relationship with the parent and they leave thinking, Mr. Harper didn't listen to me. He just wants to argue. In the end, parents just want to be listened to. You don't always have to agree with them, but if they feel like they've been listened to and you just didn't sit there and, pass judgment on them, I think that's a big, big thing.
Well, it's funny you say that, because part of the learning curve that helped me deal with this, and believe me, I still make enough mistakes even thinking I have this background. I worked for many years in the customer service industry, and I actually worked developing a training program for online reps, people who take complaints. And one of the very first things we teach them is they're not angry at you. They get on the phone and they're angry with whatever has happened, but it's not about you. This isn't personal. You just happen to be the person on the other end of the phone that they have had the first chance to vent their feelings at. And as long as, there's no obscenities, they need to vent. And your job is to say to them, I think I hear you. I think I understand. Let me see how I can resolve this. And it's always the first strategy to let them speak. And I think that's hard for us, because in an education role, even though right now the dialogue is to build relationships and to be a good listener, it's hard. We run this role change between being an introvert, where we're expected to be great listeners, and being the extrovert leader who can, demonstrate the authority and, initiatives when we're, at almost on demand. And sometimes I think those roles get challenging. They get confusing. They're competitive. They're competing goals. So I can see totally how that happens. And it was a tough lesson for me to learn back there. And it's one I still try to carry today. And it sounds like you're working on the same thing.
Absolutely. I mean, I work on it. And I think a big thing with that too is to tell the people around you it's a goal that you're working on. Because I've got some people that I work with that I trust 100%. And I've told them before, if you see me getting ready to lose it, if you see me getting ready to do something stupid or say something stupid, tell me. That's really important, because there are going to be times we work an environment that can be heated. I don't want to lose my temper and do something stupid, in all honesty, and lose my job. So I said, look, you be getting ready to do something stupid. You have my permission to grab me, tell John, stop, settle down, be quiet. I don't mind that. I might not like it at the moment, but you have my permission right now when I'm thinking clearly to do that. And that's important, I think, to have those people around us to keep us accountable.
No, it's true. And I think that that's part of that relationship that we build with our coworkers, that trust, where if one of us is going to do something that is probably not in our long-term best interest, whether it's meaning our school, our students, or our in personal long-term interest, having someone who can step in and say, let's rethink this, back me off the ledge, back me off of this so that I'm not so emotionally charged so I can think this through. And I think that is part of that whole relationship building process that we work toward with our colleagues, with our students, and with our parents and the other community members. And jeopardizing those things, I think you would agree that it takes a long time to build that trust, but it does take one mistake to fracture it. It's so delicate. And having someone that you trust to intervene and prevent that damage is, I think, an important goal. And it's important, yes, again, that whole trust thing between us as coworkers is really important. Have you had anyone do that? Have you been able to have anyone step in and say, let's rethink this, or let's call them after you've calmed down? Has that ever happened?
I have. I got a friend of mine that I work with, a gentleman I work with, and he's seen me before when I've been elevated and probably getting ready to say something or getting ready to do something. And he's stepped in and said, John, it's not worth it right now. Don't go over there. Don't have this conversation. I've got it. And that's important. You have to have those people in your lives that can, because I would do the same thing for him. So it's good. It's good. You have to have that.
It is. So if I asked you what the 3 takeaways you want for our listeners, what are the 3 things that you would tell us?
I think 3 takeaways, and they're going to sound simple and obvious, but one is listen to someone
on DisruptED TV podcast.
One without thinking.